Hey, what's cracking, everybody? This is Ali after your guide and mentor, and today we got a brand new video for you. We're talking about primary trade lines and the foundation stacking rule. This is one of the most important videos that you can watch here on this channel because I'm going to give you some guidelines on some of the things that you can do when it comes to primary trade lines. And more importantly, some of the rules that you absolutely need to follow if you want to optimize on how you obtain those trade lines. And of course, the aspect of qualifying for some sort of funding and or financing that you can absolutely use when it comes to building up your credit to the right scores and of course the infrastructure in order to qualify for that funding in the first place. Now, the foundation stacking rule is something that I've used quite a bit with my own customers individually, and the reason I say that is because every single credit profile is unique, and specifically given the fact that there are new things that are happening, including the FICO 10T, which stands for trends. We have to learn how to habitually build credit that modifies it to a standing where we can actually benefit not only the FICO 10T, but use the algorithm and the systems within the 10T to help us get more financing for the type of things that we want. So let's get started on today's topic. Now, as we all know, primary trade lines has become popular in 2020, 2019, and actually moving into the 2021. And as we progress through the year, it's going to be more and more popular. New companies are going to pop up. There's going to be trade lines that are going to be posted everywhere on the internet, and you'll be able to qualify for some sort of leverage there. Now, the idea here is to give you some of the rules and regulations and probably some guidelines to optimize your credit profile to get the best type of funding out there. So for this reason, I put together the infrastructure of what we call the foundation stacking rule. So hear me out on this. Now, the foundation stacking rule has three principles, right? So the first principle is what we call 3-to-1 ratio. Now, the 3-to-1 ratio is very simple. For every 3 non-essential primary trade lines, aim for at least 1 essential primary trade line. So here's the difference between non-essential and essentials. A non-essential primary trade line is something like My Jewelers Club, AG Jewelers, Hutton Chase, New Coast Direct, and so on and so forth. These are trade lines that are posted by companies out there that are not necessarily prime accounts, like prime bank institutions who are FDIC insured and who have a lot of financial capacity and resources. These are considered non-essential primary accounts. The primary account on the other side are banks, institutions that you go to get a checking account, savings account, other loans outside of credit cards, mortgages, and so on and so forth. A good example of this is you can actually try to obtain a secured account with a prime institution, which is an essential trade line. And the reason this is important to have this ratio is because creditors, as you start to borrow more, as the FICO 10T sees your payment habits, there's a lot more flexibility with essential primaries. And a good example of this is if you have a lot of debts, right, on non-essential primaries, you can't really leverage that to obtain maximum amount of funding. And the reason I say that is because with essential primaries, it's a revolving account, but those essential accounts can be used universally everywhere in all stores that possibly accept credit cards. On the other side, non-essential primaries stick to their own specific individual businesses. Makes it more complicated because you don't necessarily have a huge budget to dedicate towards that to enhance your payment performance. So for this reason, it's a good ratio to work with. So this is what I call in the foundation stacking rule, the 3-to-1 ratio. It's an incredibly important part, and you absolutely don't want to miss this because it'll help you get the most out of your financing. The second step in helping yourself build a stronger foundation when it comes to primary trade line is called the optimal diversity method, the ODM. And the optimal diversity method simply means getting different types of loans and financing options that you possibly have access to. But this time around, what you're going to be doing is you're going to try not to get as much inquiries. And the reason this is important is because inquiries actually cause the damage in the first place. So you don't have a lot of flexibility if you inquire that and obtain that into your credit report. That's going to be a problem because now you have a lot less flexibility on what you can do with it. So this is important because once you start to work with these type of structures and start to get diverse accounts and different types of creditors, including installment loans, furniture stores, and so on and so forth, as long as you don't have an inquiry that comes against that, what's happening is you're optimizing the way you're obtaining these trade lines. That's what we call it, the optimal diversity method. Once you understand this rule, outside of the 3-to-1 rule, what's going to happen is you're going to start building trade lines from different directions and different types of companies, albeit some of them are non-essential, while sticking to the 3-to-1 ratio. What happens now is you have a little bit of diversity that enhances your credit profile. This is what we add, the 10%. This is 10% of your FICO score. Diversity is very important, new accounts, and so on and so forth, but be optimal about it. Be understanding that, hey, some of the accounts will require inquiries. So you do your research, and I know that there's a whole lot of companies out there, but just to make it easier for you, I actually included some of these companies in the link of this video so you can go through the description and start reading on some of the companies that offer that so that you can start taking advantage today. The third and final step and primary trade line foundation stacking is what we call the prime underwriting profile strategy. Prime underwriting profile, PUP. And why this is important is because when you're looking at a specific financing and or trying to obtain some funding, you start to emulate some of the credit profiles that's required to get that type of funding. A good example of this is, let's assume your prime target, and let's say a financial goal is to get financing so you can start getting into a home. It's one of the most important things that a lot of people go through in terms of finance in their lifespan. Making a home decision or purchase is one of those things that is a big financial milestone for a lot of individuals. But also a good part of that requires you to have the right type of credit and have the capacity to be able to get the underwriting successfully done. So in order to do so, what you're going to do is you're going to try to understand, you try to study what are some of the mortgage companies looking for ideally when it comes to prime targets of credit. What are some of the things that we can do to start stacking and building our credit profile, understanding the foundation stacking role to qualify for a mortgage, especially when it comes to the best rates out there. In addition to that, what are some of the optimal requirements to keep the payment history intact, to keep your credit limits at the optimal size, especially when it comes to less than 30%, but a lot of people say try to keep it between 10 to 15%. And the reality, there's really no golden rule. So long as it's below the 30% and you're starting to respect your payments, you're aggressively paying down your credit cards and or the bills that you got to pay. In addition to that, you got to pay attention to what's the minimum score requirements for a lot of these mortgage companies out there. Now, the prime underwriting profile strategy will help you prepare your credit profile for the ideal target of underwriting a mortgage. Let's assume that was the goal when it comes to all this credit restoration journey. So start to look towards that. Start to look towards the prime underwriting profile strategy, because this will help you try to, like I said, emulate the credit profile that's required for a solid credit score, also a credit profile. But at the same time, it'll help you understand some of the requirements for mortgage underwriting, which in turn will help you get the right type of steps and rules and give you the action steps that's necessary to start following a blueprint that'll lead you down that road. So that's one of those important points that I want you to look into when it comes to primary trade line foundation stacking. Now, I want to leave you off with a small bonus that I think is going to help you quite a bit. And this is called the ideal payment history blueprint. And the reason this is an incredibly important part of building up more credit down the road, especially if you want to borrow large sums of capital later at a certain point, what happens is you need to understand what creditors are looking for. See, a lot of people are scared to ask for limit increases because they're scared that the creditor is going to ask for an inquiry, right? They're going to ask you to help go through an inquiry process where they'll have to check your credit. And the reality is that's not always the case. Now, let me give you an ideal payment history blueprint. And the way it works is you have to learn what amounts to borrow and how to optimize so you can start paying down your balances. A good golden rule is to at least borrow 30 to 45% of your credit that's allocated to any given card, and make sure that you start to pay that down within a 30-day cycle. And the reason this is important is because what happens now is the creditor starts to observe, hey, this specific client is borrowing large sums from the credit limit we gave them, but in addition to that, they're paying it down very strategic. They're always paying it above and beyond of what's owed. In addition to that, they're actually learning to utilize the credit we allocated to them on a regular basis, month in and month out. This is an incredibly important part of essentially trying to leverage the tools that you have so that the creditor feels obliged in a systematic way to tell you, hey, look, based on your recent credit performance and our payment history that we've observed, you having a relationship with us, we'd like to extend some additional credit to you. And the beautiful part about this is it doesn't require any hard inquiry. So to target that, once again, remember, borrow at least 35 to 45% of the balance on the allocated credit limit that you have, and as aggressively pay that down within the 30-day timeline. Now, I'm not saying go and max out your credit cards or borrow if you can have the capacity to pay it down. Make sure you're financially capable of borrowing that 35%, but also equally paying it down as well within a 30-day cycle. Think of the home expenses that you have, the household expenses such as groceries, utilities, some of the things that you would go out and do, perhaps transportation. All these type of things are things that you can actually use your credit card. Learn to leverage some of the creditors to do so, but also at the same time, let's assume you have 3 or 4 credit cards and you're trying to optimize that. What you can do is on one creditor, do this for 1 month. The other creditor, do the same type of expenses for the next month, and so on and so forth. Rotate between creditors to optimize the credit profiles that you have individually with them. And ultimately, my friends, what's going to happen is you're going to get those strategic limit bumps. And we know that limit bumps are actually 30% of your credit score because the utilization is going to help improve. And that's always a good thing, especially if you're not getting any inquiries, right? So I just wanted to finish off with that. So that's what we call the primary trade line foundation stacking rules. These are things that will help you get the optimal scenario when it comes to building a strong credit profile that would qualify for large amounts of funding and underwriting so that you can benefit from this good positive credit history. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to destroy that thumbs up button. Help me distribute the content out there so other people like yourself can watch these videos, ask more questions, and I can take the pleasure of answering that through a strategic video like this. And don't forget to share this video with those you feel could benefit from the information that I shared with you today, because it'll definitely help them out as much as it'll help me out. And if you have any specific questions about the processes that I discussed in this video, go ahead and leave me a comment below this video so that we can have a discussion. And with that said, once again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hey, look, we have an Insiders member. I got a couple of videos inside. We do 2 live streams a month. If you're interested in that and if something that you want to support the channel with, go ahead and look into the membership. It's actually in the description right near the subscribe button. It's the join now button, and it's really cheap, but also at the same time, you get a lot more value from this content. With that said, this is definitely your guide and mentor, Ali Tarafter. Definitely catch you guys in the next one. Bye for now.